Recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the blacksciencefictionsociety.com website. I'm William Hayashi. I'm your host for the evening, and this is the August 26th edition, 2016. My special guest tonight is the creator of the blacksciencefictionsociety.com website, Jarvis Sheffield. Welcome, Jarvis. It's nice to get you on here for an extended period. Yeah. We're going to have, tonight we're going to be talking about, we both actually had conventions that we were attending last weekend. And so we're going to talk to Jarvis. Jarvis was in Atlanta for ONYXCON, and we're going to start out with him. And then I'll talk a little bit about MIDAMERICACON, where they voted on the Hugos. But Jarvis, again, welcome to your own show.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So, we just chatted a little bit before the show started, but you guys made it a road trip, and who was with you on the trip?
All right. Once again, on the road trip roster is myself, Quasi Jackson, and Joey Pinckney, all members of Black Science Fiction Society from the Nashville area.
And did you all get in any trouble on the way down, or did you manage to stay out of trouble?
Yeah, we pretty much managed to stay out of trouble this time.
All right, and then let me ask you this: for your prep for ONYXCON, what sorts of things were you going to do there? Did you have a table there? Were you going to do some panels there? What kind of prep did you have to do to kind of get your mind right for being down there?
Oh, on this particular trip, we didn't do any panels. We just vended and kind of enjoyed some of the other festivities, like there was an art show. There were other panels.
Right.
Panel speakers. There was a young lady from Dan Foe from Tour. She was doing a panel. She flew down and did a panel on doing pitches. And so that was interesting. Had some cosplay as usual. Also, there was 2 film viewings, and one of them I particularly enjoyed was what was the name of it? It was called The Return, by Lamont Gant and Marlon McCloskey. I saw the trailer for earlier this year, and I was really impressed about it. And so when getting the opportunity to actually see the entire film was awesome. From what I understand, they have secure distribution for it as well.
Oh, that's always the hardest part. That's great, because that means you make your money back.
Definitely. And also the opening night, there was a reception and an interview that was shown of the guy that was Black Panther's stuntman.
Oh, really? Okay.
Guy De Silva. Yeah, he was there. Well, he was. His interview was played there, and also there was an art show that opened everything. So that was. And I've never went to ONYXCON. Out of the 8 years that I've been there, I never went to the opening ceremony. I always just kind of show up for the vending portion. But I'm glad we actually went to the preliminary opening ceremony.
And what was that like? What did that consist of?
Oh, that was the art show and the reception and the interview with Mr. De Silva. Okay,
all right, yeah. Was there much pageantry or anything like that, or was it just really a good program that they put together?
I think with one of the great things about ONYXCON is that it's everything's pretty much down to earth, and it will, you had the normal amount of pageantry to keep everybody engrossed in what was going on, but the people there and Joseph Wheeler III, who facilitates the event, he's a really down to earth person, and the people there were really great, and so you got to actually meet some of the artists that were there that had their work on display.
Mm-hmm. And you were there, what, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Right.
Okay, so let's take Friday. Let's start with the first day you were there. You had the opening ceremonies. You had the interview and things like that. What other things did you do, to kind of get right into the groove there?
The prep work for it, I think primarily we want to make sure that we had enough material for vending. We made sure to have enough books, and we also sell posters, so we made sure to have those in stock. And then we also have really a 42 point list of things that I check off to make sure that we have everything, so that when we're there at the event, we're not like, oh, we need to run to the store to get this something to hang this thing up on the wall, or I forgot the tablecloth or something. We want to make sure that we always have a good presentation, and so I go through that 40-point or 42-point list before we ever leave out the door. And I try to do that because we are often in different environments, and so I don't know. Sometimes I don't know until we're there if we're going to be able to hang the poster up a certain way or on the wall, or if we're in the middle of the display area or something. So doing a lot of prep work to make sure that everything flows well in the actual event.
Well, it must have been kind of easy also. Like for me, I had to fly. So if I didn't bring the stuff that I had, then I had to go and, what would I have done? At least you had the car, so you had a little more leeway in putting together, doing your prep work. But man, 42 items, that's pretty comprehensive in terms of, I said I used the nice word, comprehensive. That's not like anal, but I mean it's still. I think people probably don't understand when, how much you have to do in order to be an exhibitor, to have a sales table, to, moderate panels and things like that, or even just be on panels. So that was pretty big. That was a big deal. And I'm sorry, did you have a table or did you not have a table?
Oh, we had a table.
Yeah, and so how long did it take you guys to set up, given the fact that you had your 42-item checklist pretty much taken care of?
I think we've gotten pretty good at putting things together and pretty quickly now. So it took us about, from start to finish, about 35 minutes. And so we want to make sure to get there early.
Right.
You don't want to be rushing. And, people, because something I noticed, people actually start coming in earlier than what's on the flyers. And so you want to catch those people as well if you can.
And then, how many people attended the event?
Oh, my goodness, I couldn't tell you. It was hundreds, I could tell you that. It wasn't in thousands, but it was in the hundreds. And so it was a good showing. At first, when the doors first open, people trying to trickle in, and you're like, oh, I wonder if it's gonna be a great event or if it's gonna be so-so or whatever. But it kind of picks up, and then by the end of the day, you're exhausted from talking to so many people and in the festivities.
Yeah. Who did now? Excuse me. Did you meet anybody who really stood out? That we might know or what have you,
Let me see. There were some guys that kind of came completely out the blue. This was their first event, and they had, their setup, the vending setup was so awesome. It was ridiculous. Their product is called Orchard Organist. And it's basically, it kind of looks like a woman with the afro, but she's kind of green, and her hair is flowers and stuff. And what they do, they center around earth-related stuff, recycling and things of that nature. And so they were selling shirts, and they had this huge, awesome poster on the wall, and they had some mannequins with the shirts on them and with the glowing insides, and it was really outstanding. And then one thing that kind of caught me off guard, we might have to borrow. They had actually glow in the dark shoes. They had like LEDs
Okay.
on their shoes. I was like, hold up, what is that moving around over there? And it was their shoes. I was like, wow, that's awesome.
I have a funny story about that real quick. I'm going to diverge for a second. I think it was the very first episode of Cops, and in the here somebody wants to know you got any pictures? And what happened was two kids had robbed, I think, like a 7-Eleven or something, and so the cops and the cameraman and the producer were chasing them through kind of a messy, marshy, woody kind of area. And you hear the cops laughing, and you hear the cameraman laughing, because the camera's not steady. And finally they run down these kids, and we find out why they were laughing. These kids were running out in the dark away from the cops with shoes that had lights on them.
Oh, that's not too bright.
Oh, well, criminals aren't always the smartest. And so, you figure there were a few hundred people who came through there, plus the things that you saw. What kind of reception did you get? What kind of things did people talk about when they did stop by to see you guys at your table?
Well, normally we get the similar comments. We run into people that we kind of all attend the same circuit. We go to similar events and see each other and just kind of catch up and buy each other's stuff. And then you have other people that were oblivious to our existence, and they'll be like, oh, man, this is great. I'd never seen anything like that. I didn't know there's many people doing science fiction, and what you're doing is pretty cool. And I'm like, well, thank you, and make sure to join the site. And I kind of let them know what we're doing, what we've been doing, and they are kind of amazed that, we have a science fiction social network and a magazine and a radio show. Like, you guys are doing a lot. Like, well, we enjoy what we're doing, and hopefully people will like what we're doing and continue to support it.
Sure. Excuse me. Did you run into any other people who, like, maybe I interviewed but you hadn't met yet or anything? Was there anything unexpected like that?
Who was there? I'm trying to think who was there that we've interviewed. Of course, Joseph Wheeler, you interviewed him a couple of years ago. Let's see. I think that was about it.
Okay.
There were about 24 people there that we haven't interviewed, and most of those were new people that we met. I think we had we got a couple. There are about a half dozen people that are members that we hadn't got around to yet, and then maybe 24 new people, because like I said, they had quite a bit of new entrants in the con.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's always good. I had someone track me down who I had interviewed. Clarence Claiborne, and I had interviewed him a while back.
Zigzag Claiborne?
Yeah, Zigzag, yeah.
Oh,
and
okay.
he tracked me down and he was in, I forget, well, he was in the, I moderated a panel on Afrofuturism, and, before I could sit down or anything, he came up to me, and I looked at it, and I didn't know him by Zigzag, but I didn't remember that. But when he told me about the interview, I said, oh, yeah, now I remember you. But he tracked me down in Kansas City at the convention, and that was pretty cool. And then, well, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay, because I get that. It's a great feeling when you actually get to meet the different individuals that you get to know on the website in person.
Yeah, and I've been doing this for 3 years now, and that's a lot of people that I've interviewed. And shamefully on my part, I'm going to blame it on the concussion. I don't remember every single person by name, but when I get to talk to them for a few minutes and they remind me, then I do remember. So that was pretty outstanding that he was there, and then Cerise Rennie Murphy was there, and I didn't get to interview her because it was a rare Friday night when I had a date, and so Penelope interviewed her.
Okay.
But she also came down to Florida A&M when I was one of the guests for, and she was a guest for their Black to the Future literary event.
Right.
Their literary
they would
festival.
do that every year.
Well, they did Afro-Retroism this last year, and I think just between you and me, because she's not going to know, the provost at Florida A&M has suggested that they do an Afrofuturism event every year.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, and so that what's happening now is people are figuring out that there is a wealth of creative work, writing, music, video, episodic webcasts and stuff like that in the Afrofuturism genre. And that was one of the things that I discussed at the Afrofuturism panel at MIDAMERICACON. If you want, I can pivot to some of the stuff that I did, and we can just talk back and forth about the various things we went through, unless you got something else that you wanted to add about, what was like the most outstanding part of you being at ONYXCON, because you've been there before. So this is like a repeat engagement for you.
Oh, yeah. I think in ONYXCON, they started the same year we started. So we started. So we're both 8 years old now. And it's hard to pinpoint just one thing because, I enjoy the entire cultural aspect of being around other creative people that actually have, went beyond just theory and talk and stuff, actually have done things and are out here displaying their work and sharing how they got it done and just talking about the industry and stuff with them. But one of the things I was really excited about was that returned film that I kind of casually mentioned.
Right.
I can't wait till everybody else is able to see it because it was an independent film. It was really well put together, and it was intriguing. So much so that when you got to the end, you're like, oh, okay, I want to see the next one because there's some questions I have about this and questions about that. And
right.
and actually being in an environment where you see some great work and actually talk to the creators in person, that was really cool. So they were there, they were answering questions, and buying your stuff and just having a great conversation about the industry and how they got things done and where they're going. I was really impressed. Their company is called Creative Genius. They're out of Atlanta, Georgia.
The thing that strikes me, big and small at these conventions, is the amount of networking that goes on. You actually get to talk to people who do things that you do and do things that are just completely outside of your own sphere. I got to say hi to George R.R. Martin, the Game of Thrones guy.
Okay.
Well, you know what I said to him? I said, I like your work. Haven't seen much of it, read a little bit of it, but I really like the way that you've handled this whole thing, and I've enjoyed, what I've seen of you. And that's all I said because I didn't want to bother him. I didn't want an autograph. I didn't want to stand there and talk about, well, why did you kill off so-and-so? I didn't want to be like, what was it? I didn't want to do what that woman did in Misery to James Caan's ankles.
Oh, goodness.
She whacked him with a what was it, a sledgehammer. But that's the other thing. A lot of the people who I read in the Golden Age were there, you know, and a couple of them sat in, believe it or not, in some of the panel discussions, which was really surprising too. There were literally hundreds. I have a booklet here that is about the size, a little bit bigger than a deck of cards in size. And let's see how many pages I've got in here. There are easily 160 pages of panels that were going on. You know, I'm subtracting some out of here because of some are maps and some are stuff. But the thing started on Wednesday. And Wednesday, I wasn't sure if I was going to be released to go to this. The previous Friday, I got T-boned by another car, and I managed to save my life. The car was coming toward my door at, they figure, over 45 miles an hour. I saw it about 10 feet away, and instead of jamming on the brakes, I hit the gas so that it hit the car door behind me instead of my door, because everybody said inevitably I would have either been really messed up or killed.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
that sounds pretty bad.
I was thinking about that, and with my with myself, after I got hit, that was like 3:30 in the afternoon. I still went and did a show at 8 p.m., and that was when I realized I had a
little bump on your head.
I had a bump on my head because I could feel it then, and I could tell I had a concussion because I was sitting here in my chair. I'm looking at the chat. I'm doing the things that I do, doing my little research as we're doing the show, and then I kind of just drifted away, and then I realized I had laundry downstairs that had to go from the washer to the dryer. So I stood up, and I'm halfway down the stairs with my dumbass self, and that's when I realized, you know, you're not really concentrating on what you're doing. You have got, and you know, obviously the term, you got your bell rung, and so. But even though that didn't dissuade me from going down and moving my laundry, but see, you all didn't know that. But that was when I realized I really
you were
had
doing all that when we were doing the show.
Exactly.
Okay, well, at least it wasn't the dishes.
The dishes you can hear. I quit doing the dishes while I do the show, and I know that was rude. But you know, sometimes, And so then, when I got off the phone, I called my doctor, or got off the show, I called my doctor. He says, well, you should stay up till about 1 or 2, watch some movies, see how you are. If you get really drowsy, then you're going to have to go to the emergency room. And I didn't get really drowsy or anything, but I had been hit pretty bad. So that's Friday, and then I'm supposed to fly into Kansas City on Thursday, and he said if I had some vascular involvement, which meant, either arteries or veins or anything like that in my head that were, bruised or anything, I couldn't fly. Can't get in a plane because, but he let me go. He let me go Wednesday night. So here's what happened. It's pouring down rain Thursday morning here in Chicago, and I've got a rental car, which, with my dumbass self, I drove home Friday night, and it was like a Range Rover, and you know how these newer cars, the mirrors tuck in so that when you park?
Right.
Well, the mirrors were tucked in, and I couldn't get them untucked while I'm driving. So I'm driving home in the dark, in the rain, so carefully. I get the car parked, and I didn't move it at all. Yeah, with no mirrors.
This sounds like a scene out of one of your movies, right?
Oh, yeah, I know. And the thing is you don't have good judgment. You don't have good judgment when you have a concussion. I feel really bad.
My wife was in the background like, he better go to the doctor.
Yeah, I know. Well, you all dogged me so bad, but I didn't do that bad a show. So there. So anyway, the first thing I had to do was I had to get checked in, and Christine, who was here in the chat room a couple weeks ago, said, "Oh, I've got a membership that you can use because otherwise, they're expensive, man. It's like $300 or something for membership because this is where they vote on the Hugos. This is probably the largest science fiction convention in the world. I mean, this year it was in Kansas City. Next year it's in Helsinki, Finland. I mean, that's how big they are. They just
is that part of WorldCon?
Yeah, WorldCon. Yeah, it's WorldCon, and cities bid for it. So anyway, I get there, I check in, and then I'm thinking, oh crap, and I'm with a friend, and we have to. And I'm thinking, oh man, I gotta get up off of like $600 if we're gonna get, passes to get in. And the head of registration said, and I was trying to think of Christina's last name, and I couldn't because I was still a little messed up. And she said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm an author, I'm a screenwriter, I'm a film producer, I do a interview show on black science fiction. She said, bingo. I said, what? She said, let's get you a press pass.
There you go.
So I got in for no money.
So using that Black Science Fiction Society press pass, it opens doors.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And so, I went in there Thursday because I wanted to see the lay of the land before I had to do something. And man, it was hot. It was humid. I'm wearing nice clothes because an American Airlines employee allowed me to fly on her in her friends and family group. So I know this is going to sound terrible. I did my round trip from Chicago to Kansas City for about $92, and I flew first class on one going down there. That's cheaper than driving. That's cheaper than driving. $92. Yeah. I would have spent more than $100 in gas driving from here to Chicago to Kansas City. So that was lucky. So I saved money on the airfare. I didn't have to pay for the pass. And I know that, this was, I was very lucky about this. So I went in there into the press room where the guys are making the badges and everything, and they couldn't be happier. One of them runs Christina's having trouble. She's just going to have to keep reloading, I think. So I got there. They were very polite. They gave me and my friend press passes, and then I got a badge, a little ribbon that says program participant, so I could go in the green room and things like that. So that was just, it was excellent. And so the next morning, I was staying out by the airport because I got a really good deal, and I know that the only reason why I'm talking about how much everything costs was because this was unexpected. They contacted me at the beginning of July and said, hey, thanks for agreeing to be on the program. And they had me moderating stuff. And then, then you get your car totaled out and you go, okay, well, I'm going to have to be spending some money. So it did work out. But my first thing that I had to moderate was like at 10 o'clock on Friday morning. And it was about AIs, artificial intelligences. And the room was filled. And I was the moderator. I had a really good panel. I had...
how many people were on the panel?
4 others in addition to me. No, actually, 3 others in addition. 1, 2... Yeah, there were 3 others in addition to me. So there were 4 of us on the panel. And one woman worked in... her name was S.B. Divya. She's actually working in artificial intelligence now. At the professional level. Tom Easton, he was a retired IT guy who had brushed up against AI, and Milt Stevens, another older guy, retired guy, and then there was me. And the one thing that kind of bothered me was the panels were only 50 minutes long. And that's not really long to delve into much. And I think also, there's probably a little bit of long-winded. Or somebody who really knows something. And I'll tell you about that in a little while. And so one of the things that people really respect about the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show is that it goes for 2 hours. and doing a 2-hour interview is pretty much unheard of everywhere. I mean, everywhere that I talk to people about it, they say, "Oh yeah, what's the show about?" And I said, "It's a 2-hour interview show." They're like looking at me like, "Oh my God, how can you do that for 2 hours?" And I said, "Well, for me, it's kind of easy." And it lets you know, and I got their interest by saying, if I interview you, by the time the 2 hours is up, people get a very, very good idea of not only what you do, but what it was that made you the way you were to get it done. So that was pretty exciting for the whole thing. And then I had a little break, and then I had another one where I just sat on a panel, and that was on class in science fiction, like how do you create civilizations, and do people lean on class too much in terms of conflict and creating antagonists and protagonists. And I have to say that the level of discussion was great.
Okay.
But then the best one was when I actually moderated the panel on Afrofuturism, which was a big damn deal for me. Because
now who was on this
one? This one, it was funny. Johnny Brown, and he's a professor at one of the University of California campuses. And I have to admit that I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. But he teaches an actual full-on class on Afrofuturism, which is just unbelievable that a class like that. And he's a younger guy, too, and, the campus has him teaching a full-on class. I had a South African, a white guy named, he's Dr. Nick Wood, and he writes stories on, he writes interracial-based stories, interracial stories that get censored in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
Because, even though apartheid is over, and even though they had the whole reconciliation thing, it's still the dichotomy between black and white is still very stark there. And then Bill Campbell was there, and he's he's a publisher. And excuse me for forgetting what his publishing company.
Rosarium Productions.
Right.
His company is multicultural. You had him on the show.
Yeah. And then I had Cerise Rennie Murphy, who I shared time with at Florida A&M when we had their Black to the Future literary festival, and then I got to moderate. And I will tell you, we talked about a number of things. There were a lot of people with questions. But the thing that struck me the most about this panel was, first of all, you could hear a pin drop in there. There was no people muttering to each other or whispering to each other. Everybody was like focused
totally
on every
engaged.
And there were, I would say, probably in the room there were maybe somewhere between 5 and 10 black folks, and then 50 or 60 whites in there, and it was just one hell of a discussion. And everybody was upset that it was only 50 minutes long. And then only 2
now
people
here's a
left
question
early.
I have before I forget. Did
Okay.
anybody tape this stuff?
No, and I found out the reason why. They have so many panels, and they have so many different people in them, that unless they change the rules at registration so that people would automatically give consent for their voices to be heard or their likeness to be seen, that it's just too big an event to guarantee that everybody in a room is going to agree to allow, let's say a podcast of all of these different panels. So that's a big deal that they're working on. One of the things that they're thinking of doing is at registration, everybody who consents, they're going to try to get everybody's consent. But if one person doesn't consent and they show up at one of these discussions, and let's say they ask a question or they stand up and they're seen by the camera, then you're screwed. You can't record it, you can't publish it, you can't do anything with it. So it's very hard. And you've got an international crowd. I mean, this is I mean, literally there were, hold on, I got it right here. Just the people, not counting the people who showed up, they had 4,602 attending members, okay, and 7,338 total members, not counting press, not counting people who didn't come for the membership, but just came for the just for panels and for the whatever other events that they had. There are a lot of people there who were dressed up, a lot of people who were in costume. I saw something that I can't unsee. I saw a 325-pound Princess Leia, fully done. That was a little shocking. It was just unusual to see. There was a guy dressed as Obi-Wan Kenobi who had a perfect costume. Everybody and their kids wanted to have a picture taken with him. And
that cosplay thing has really been picking up.
It is. And there were a ton of people who were dressed from the cast of Suicide Squad. A lot of people there. Christina says supporting members vote for awards but don't attend. Yeah, that's true, because they mentioned somewhere else on the website about how many ballots they got from how many different places around the world. Mm-hmm. At the Afrofuturism panel, it's funny because, the guy we mentioned, Clarence Zigzag Claiborne, was actually sitting there, and he was sitting next to, some other people. I didn't know who they were. And then, I figured he came up to me and he told me who he was. So that's kind of cool that, people come to this, just like you said, people you haven't met in person, and you do finally get to meet them.
Look,
so,
it's really, that right there is, I think that's so important to me, that, people take the time to come over and speak, and not, it's great to be on the website, and I appreciate everybody on the website. I really do. But getting to meet them in person, that's a great thing.
Mhm. And I got to have dinner with some people, and it was a very positive experience for someone who wasn't feeling top notch. One thing that I did notice.
Will you be looking into attending more conventions after having that experience?
Well, okay. Here we go in full disclosure. One of the guys in registration helps run a couple of cons here in Chicago, and he said, "Hey, would you want to come in and do some content? Would you want to, moderate?" And I said yes. And when I got back, I got a link. And I had to go through, like a 15-minute, what are you interested in? What aren't you interested in? Blah, 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 for WindyCon, Chicago being the windy city. So, yeah, I'll do it more. And the reason why this was important to me was because I wanted to raise my visibility as an author. When I did get to discuss, my work, people are going, now that's brilliant, or that's fun, or, that sounds like something that I want to get into. And you know what? There was actually a question at the Afrofuturism panel where a white guy said, well, do I have to know anything about black culture to read some of this stuff? And, the consensus of the panel, well, yeah, but the consensus of the panel was, no, you don't, because you learn as you read. And if it's something that you don't know about, then, then that's something for you to do some research with. So that was, I can't say enough about, Worldcon putting on, doing that panel, and then not inviting the usual suspects. And I don't say that for any bad reason, but, normally something like this, you see, Yatasha Womack, because she wrote the book on Afrofuturism. Oh, and by the way, both Cerise and I did give shout-outs to blacksciencefictionsociety.com. I told them how many megabytes of Afrofuturistic content in art, in writing, in links to videos, and all of that stuff. Because people said, well, where do we find this? Because we don't hear about it. We don't know about it. And I said, it's not something that is as easily found as other things. And then we had a discussion about, well, should Afrofuturism be rolled into mainstream sci-fi or not? Because I had 11 pages, 8 or 11, I don't know, a bunch of pages from Wikipedia talking about different types of sci-fi. And, of course, Afrofuturism was not in that Wikipedia article. Wikipedia has an Afrofuturism article or a article by itself. And so we discussed that too. And I brought up the fact that part of that is political, part of that is I said, I'm going to use the word chauvinism, but what I really mean is racist, and they all laughed. Well, no, I mean, they were cool about it because it was, they wanted to know. And I think that was one of the things that I was struck with a lot, was that they were there genuinely to learn things and find out new stuff,
Right. And that's the same reception that I received, I think it was 2 years ago at DECCON, which is part of WorldCon. And the cool thing about it, I didn't, I got the same reception that I get at ONYXCON or any other con, but I did not change, I didn't change my pitch, I didn't change the graphics or anything that I do. I just presented Black science fiction for what it is. It's a genre of science fiction, and it's open for everybody, whether you're, black, white, green, or whatever, because I look at it like Black science fiction as, an Asian restaurant or a Mexican restaurant. You know what you're getting, but it's open for everybody. And so I had an excellent reception there as well. But I learned also, it reinforced that in certain instances, you don't have to change your message to still get through, but you do have to put yourself in different arenas to find that out.
Yeah, if you have never done other things, you would think you might have mistaken impressions. I think that's the best way to put it. Unless you get out there, then you're not going to know. And I wonder what kind of reception I was going to get, because I was invited to do all of this stuff. They made up all these decisions. They put me on all these panels, and they had to have done it just by looking up what they could find on me and the endorsement I got, from, or the referral from Christine. And I was really interested to see, what the reception was. But you know what? The coolest thing is, people who are interested in science fiction, fantasy, and horror, the people who go to these conventions, they are the creative elite. And I mean that as both creators and consumers, because remember, not everybody reads books anymore. Not everybody checks out, new things on YouTube. They go to the same channels. Not everybody checks out new podcasts from different sources. They get their favorites and they stick with that. But the fact that so many people showed up for so many of these different things, what was amazing to me. And then the other thing that happened to me was I was in 2 panels that had to do with podcasting. One was finding your voice in podcasting, and the other one was, I had to give a mock interview to show, the way I interview. And the woman who I was, there were 2 of us, and the other woman is Joy Ward, and she does interviews for, she does it for what magazine? I forget which magazine. So she interviews people to get content, and then she writes up a review in the magazine, or an interview, writes up the interview in the magazine, and then I do mine live. So it was great. And again, nobody left. Nobody left early. One of the people there was one of the program people for the event. And when I went back to the press room I had to get something, I forget what. And she just was sitting there on the couch, and she just looked at me and she pointed at me. She said, "You are funny." And I
That's
said,
something we're intimately familiar with.
Well, and the other thing was I worried about whether I would be lucent, whether I would be sharp, because I didn't know, I was tired a lot because of the concussion, but I didn't know how well I'd do. My exposure was pretty kind of cool there. People in the Afrofuturism panel were a little curious at first. They go, well, your last name is Hayashi, and you're Japanese, and you look Puerto Rican or Cuban or something. And how come you're moderating? So I explained to them that I am multiracial, biracial. And then they were like, oh, and I said, and I wrote a trilogy about black folks living on the moon since before Neil Armstrong got, and then they got real intrigued. So it was a lot of cool treatment. I mean, I got treated very, very well. They were very respectful. I mean, the amenities they actually had a green room, but your ass is not allowed in there if you don't have your purple ribbon on your badge. They had a woman there who scared me. She did. Little tiny woman. This woman's like 2/3 my height, and she said, she told me to march my ass across the way because the program room was over there and go get my purple ribbon if I wanted to come in there and get a snack. So it was funny. But you know what? Kansas City people are kind of nice. I will tell you this. One of the observations I made, I took the bus from out near the airport downtown, and I could get a all-day bus pass for $3. And otherwise, a cab was going to cost like $40. So I'm not going to pay $40 for a cab. So what's funny is first thing in the morning, everybody on the buses are white. And then late at night, when I was bringing my butt back to the hotel, everybody on the buses were black. So I don't know what that means, and I don't understand the dichotomy, but it was just something I saw in Kansas City.
Observance.
Yeah. And now when you're at ONYXCON, you're kind of a rock star now. First of all, BSFS has been up for a long ass time. Look how many other black themed writing and sci-fi sites have just gone by the wayside.
Yeah, I don't know about the rock star part, but I enjoy the camaraderie of running into other creators, seeing them year in, year out, and how everyone has progressed, and new products that they have out, and we share how to do things and where the next event is going to be, and all of that type of stuff is invaluable to me when I go to these events. So, and I can't stress this enough that they serve the BlackCon serve a multitude of purposes. One of them being that they're culture events, because there's not just the products of books and comics, but people have food there, people have music there, they have clothing there, they have art, and I'm not sure if I mentioned jewelry, but it's a multitude of different things. And then in addition to that, the networking opportunities. So you get to meet other creators, and like I said, you can share information on all types of things. And then also, one thing that we kind of overlook is that we keep a lot. I hear this a lot. We don't have distribution. We don't have distribution. We need distribution. These different events are our distribution points, and most of them are in their infancy. With ONYXCON being 8 years in the game, and that's one of our distribution points. And there are other events that you can attend to sell your stuff. And like I said, benefit from those other things and networking and having that cultural aspect. You know, most of these events are family friendly, so you can not only just enjoy it yourself, but if you're married and have kids or whatever, you can bring your family along too and have them experience it. And then also by having little kids, making them kid friendly, that's the next generation of consumers that are going to buy your stuff. So it kind of benefits everybody to attend the different events and to participate in the events yourself if you are a creator.
Yeah, and then the other part is this event was managed well in terms of, you know, they had a code of behavior, you know, and you know, if you were going to be doing cosplay, I thought this was funny. I think Missouri is an open carry state.
Oh,
but
wow.
if you had, you know, costume weapons and things like that, they had actual police there who had to check them and had to mark them, had to tag them, you know, because they wanted to create that, they wanted to maintain a safe venue, you know, for everybody. And there weren't a lot of kids there, but there were some kids there, a lot of kids in strollers. Oh, man, I saw the most white people on scooters that I had ever seen, you know, those four-wheel that I had ever seen in my entire life. I mean, they were just zipping around everywhere. And that was fun to watch, you know, how they get in and out of the
hoverboards.
No, they didn't no, they did not. Christine mentions that the KC residents didn't even know there was a bus from the airport. That's the one I took, Christine. I took that, and it stopped right in front of my hotel. I was at the Days Inn and Suites or something, got a good deal there. But it stopped like right in front of my hotel. And I think it only took like, you know, maybe 35, 45 minutes to get downtown, and it dropped me off like 2 blocks from the convention center. So that was really convenient. Now, who the hell, I mean, think about that. For 3 days going back and forth, that would have been 40, 45, you know, that would have been that would have been a lot of cab fare. And, you know, or worse yet, you rent a car. And then you have, you know, it's parked downtown all day, and I don't know what the parking is like here in Chicago. Man, you park all day someplace, and you could be spending $50 a day for parking.
Oh, wow.
You know?
That's crazy. When I was joking about the hoverboards, one year at the ONYXCON, they had these unicycles.
Right.
And they were like, hey, you want to try? Like, no. They were letting people try them out. I was like, no, I'm not going to fall in front of all these people. No.
I like my teeth. Yeah, I like my teeth, and I don't need to, you know, another concussion. They didn't have anything like that inside. I mean, it was really a well-behaved group. The top floor of the convention center is where they did the commerce, where everybody had their tables and stuff. And I went by, you know, Bill Campbell's table, checked out his stuff, and but it was like one day it was really, really, it was hot. It was mid-90s with about 90% humidity, and that's just miserable. Miserable kind of weather, and that top floor was a little warm, you know. But it sure kept you from leaving, you know, to go outside to eat or something like that, because nobody wanted to walk around.
Now, once you're in, you stay.
Oh yeah. But it was a really nice event, you know, and actually, you know, Christine is on the line if she wants to say anything about her experience at MIDAMERICACON. I don't know. You've been unmuted, Christine, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Oh, I had a blast. I'm already trying to figure out how to save up for Helsinki, and I have to tell you.
Yes, go ahead.
People have been kind of pushing me to recommend people of color. That whole sad puppies thing set them on fire about this not being all-white conferences and being exclusive, and I had no idea what to expect, and I know they had some trouble with their programming team, and so they had to kind of reset the program, and there were computer glitches. I was on panels that didn't make sense, and they really worked well to put it together. But I have to tell you, the reception was like nothing I'd ever seen. There were people from international locations coming by my table and asking if I wanted to go to dinner. I went to the coffee clutch thinking there's nobody going to be sitting at my table, and here were a bunch of middle-aged white guys who had been in my science panel. And I thought, who's going to show up for a panel at 9 o'clock at night about whether or not you can have life on a meridional world? And I said, hey, I'm a recovering civil engineer, and before we get started, now this room is packed and it's standing room only, and I said, I want to make sure before I introduce the guest, does everybody understand the science we're going to be talking about? Every hand went up, and I thought, well, good, okay, then the only one who doesn't understand this subject is the moderator. I had a good time. We sold out of books, and other dealers were saying, hey, when you're at panels, we can take care of it, but my family showed up to help. No one cared that the only people staffing my booth were three other black people. It wasn't about, I didn't feel black, I didn't feel female. I felt like this was the family I'd been looking for. I got coached about where to go next. My daughter is thinking about going to New Zealand. The people who were campaigning to have New Zealand hosted in 2020 sat her down and told her where to stay, what to expect. So the idea that this was just a bunch of geeks, Jeanette Epps walked by, the black female astronaut. And oh, I met your kids. They are amazing. They have my contact information. Let's stay in touch after this. And I said, how'd you meet my kids? Well, they had been over by the TARDIS goofing around. And everyone said, oh, my God, that woman, she has such a great cosplay costume. I said, no, that's that's a real uniform. And so they really wanted us. I felt embraced there. I was meeting people I'd never met before. I was on 11 things. So I had a color-coded spreadsheet that said, here's when I'm talking, here's when Bill's doing Afrofuturism. My family had already said we're going to cover the table. And I couldn't make it to any panels because people were stopping me in the hallway and they wanted to talk and they wanted to know about the book, and people were coming over.
I was despondent because I didn't get to see you, and I looked around and I was a little frazzled myself. I was not as sharp as I normally am, and I was really looking forward to seeing you. And were you here for the very beginning of the show?
When
I showed up, this show that we're talking about now, when I showed up, I almost had to buy a membership, because I couldn't remember if I was supposed to meet you or whatever, and I was all frazzled and everything, and they gave me a press pass.
Wow.
And no charge. They were so, like you said, they were so happy and so accommodating to me that I don't, like what you just said, I don't know how, I think, probably the sad puppy thing, which people go look that up. We're not going to rehash that on this show. But, oh, my God, first of all, was it your recommendation that got me up moderating and doing all those panels, or did they look me up?
Yep. I got them tracking your Facebook page and Milton's page. So they were looking at Black Science Fiction Society, State of Black Science Fiction. Jeff Orth, who is one of the organizers, came down to Atlanta with me and set up a MIDAMERICACON table, has already recruited someone that was there to be a guest of honor at the regional next year. I know Nalo Hopkinson is one of the guests that's going to be at Helsinki. They are serious in a way that's not phony or condescending or they are.
Yeah, I didn't get that at all. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mentioned to me that these cons, because I compared it to children's publishing conventions, and they
Sure.
said, no, this is about a village and this is about being social. This is a community, a real community. And I took it with a grain of salt till I showed up, and I cannot tell you, those people don't give up. They're partying till 1 in the morning.
Oh my God! No kidding.
The guards were worn out. They had to kick George R. Martin's group out of the Midland Theater about 2:30 in the morning. I'm exhausted and energized and pumped and excited, and I left that with some kind of renewed hope about us developing a broader audience for our work.
Yeah, I got that at the Afrofuturism panel too, because as I said, first of all, you could hear a pin drop in there. Everybody in there was into what we were talking about, and they wanted to know about this whole big thing. And most of the whites in there didn't know how big Afrofuturism is in terms of available content and people who've been doing something. I said, okay, how many people here know these Afrofuturists other than Octavia Butler, Samuel Delaney, Tananarive and Stephen Barnes? And they all laughed and they brought their hands down, because they hadn't heard about it. And so they were genuinely there to hear about this whole genre. And I was honestly amazed. I was amazed. You could hear a pin drop in there, and two people left early, but one had a scooter and the other one was with the scooter lady, and I think they were just wanting to get out early, but nobody left early. And the one thing that everybody universally criticized was that 50 minutes was not long enough for a lot of these panel discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get that too, Christine?
They had an entire Kevin Wilmot day, and so I wanted to go to Escape to Planet Negro. I could not make it to any of the ancillary things because I was either speaking or at my table, and people wanted to talk. I had a woman, she had to be 80, who came by, bought a book, wanted to know what it was about, and then she came back the next day and said, I have to tell you, I thought, you know what, I'm curious, I'm just going to peek at the first chapter. She said, an hour later, I was still reading and almost missed my panel. It was this amazing, they said, no, we're gonna do whatever we can to showcase it. And then the one guy who went on a racist rant in one of the panels, had his badge revoked and was removed from the premises.
Wow.
They were serious. One woman served scotch on her panel, and it violated the code of conduct, and she was suspended and she was famous. So they're their game plan, but they were very aware that there were going to be people there who didn't want us there. And when that one guy got up, I wasn't at that panel, but everyone was talking about it and went on a racist rant. He was removed. And they're having, of the 4 fiction awards, one went to Andy Weir because, of course, it's Andy Weir, for The Martian. The other 3 went to women of color, 2 African-American women and an Asian woman. And so they are putting their stake in the ground. They wanted to know more about our work, and not because they were making some statement, but because they said, this is what science fiction is supposed to be, inclusive. And they don't tolerate all that mess that's been showing up.
That was the feeling I got. And then, I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to reduce science fiction, and to a lesser extent fantasy and horror, down to its essence. And its essence is colorblind. Its essence is not based upon cultural norms, but the examination of what can be, what should be, what might be, and all those sorts of things. And I can't, like I said, I can't compliment them enough about at least how I was treated. And to hear the same thing come from you, it sounds like that they are definitely on track to try to eliminate all of those crybaby things that happened last year and that have been going on all along. Jarvis, when you attend a lot of these Black Age conventions, is there anything negative that you either see or hear? And I'm not asking you to tattle on anybody, but are people looking at the state of Black science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and talking about cultural penetration, cultural acceptance, things along that nature, mainstreaming it so that it's not this nebulous thing that's hiding out in the dark off to the side?
No,
Oh, yeah, baby. I asked the questions. Oh, yeah.
It's nebulous.
Sorry.
No, I don't hear any negatives in terms of, staying in the shadows or anything. That I think the biggest thing is, we want more participation and also learning and executing marketing. I think those are the only two concerns that I've really seen or heard over the last few years. Because, like I said, I've been going for this is my 6th year going to different conventions, whether it's in Philadelphia or Detroit or Atlanta. That's been the prevailing thing that I've heard within each of us, that we want to continue to grow these events, and then also to market them, continue to market them better, so that we can continue to grow the events. But it's like a family reunion for me, basically, a sci-fi family reunion.
That seems to be the universal issue, the universal challenge, regardless of black, white, Afrofuturism, mainstream, whatever, is that getting if you don't have a major publisher or distribution channel, getting your work above the background noise, because there's so many different ways to there's so much content out there. It's hard to get your work above the background noise, and we all agreed in one of the panels that basically in the Afrofuturism panel that persistence is basically the key to everything. Because if you try something and it doesn't work, and then you try something else and it doesn't work, and then you give up, you're shortchanging yourself, because it's not that easy. Not everybody gets HarperCollins to put $200,000 behind a marketing campaign, or not everybody gets a Warner Brothers option that pays a ton of money, and then it becomes the newest thing. So, I did criticize the fact that 50 Shades of Grey was some bad lightning, but you get those kinds of really bad storms every now and then. For those who tuned in late, you're listening to, obviously, the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, service of the blacksciencefictionsociety.com website. Right now I have Jarvis Sheffield, who attended ONYXCON last weekend, Christine Butler, and myself. The two of us were at MIDAMERICACON, which is was a Worldcon convention in Kansas City this last weekend. And it appears that, for the most part, a common thread for the three of us is the acceptance and a desire for other people, a curiosity on the part of other people about not only black authors, content creators, filmmakers, what have you, but maybe how Afrofuturism as a genre, as a movement, is fitting into maybe the mainstream movement of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Christine, I want to ask you, did you attend the Hugo ceremony?
I watched it by live feed.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I missed it. I was like dead in my bed because I had to leave the next morning.
Party.
I wanted to be able to. They had food in the con suite, and it was just so much more fun. So I was with Clarence and Cerise watching the feed, and it was good because everybody was making good statements. The astronauts got up and accepted the awards for the Martians. We were there to hear them announce that Nettie got an award and Kay Jemison got an award and a list long. And so it was party, plus we could be near the food and the booze, and I much better way. I mean, they had it live streaming on a really large screen TV, so it was good.
Yeah. Did other than astronauts, did you get to meet any other notables?
I went to George R. R. Martin's private party. That was and I met Clarence and Brother Guy, Cerise. I couldn't find you. Steve Silver, who's with Science Fiction Writers of America. It was kind of a whirlwind. I had quite a few people who are well known in the science fiction community on panels I was moderating that I didn't know before I came, and also I'm looking heavily into writing more short stuff for their anthologies, which is how a lot of them come to be known. So I think what I would do next time is, if I can scrape up the money to go to Helsinki, agree to do panels but not have a table in the creator space. You meet a lot of people there. I sold a lot of books, but I think my networking would have been even triple effective if I had been able to go to other panels and meet people in the hallway. There was a lot to do in a very, it seems like there's so much space to fill in terms of time, and I was rarely sitting down. Yeah.
I happened to bring, I think, 100 flyers about Darkside, and when I got home, I only had 22 left. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot to hand out, especially if you're just doing panels, So, yeah, I think you're right. The networking thing is first of all, it's a little more fun than just sitting at the table. Not that sitting at the table is bad, because a lot of people come by. But in terms of networking and getting out and meeting people that you wouldn't have met otherwise, I think you're right, Christine. I think that that being able to do the panels and doing panels that are maybe even a little bit out of your comfort zone probably is not a bad idea either, because it forces you to actually be kind of facile on your feet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all in all, I had a great time. Sounds like you had a great time. Jarvis, it sounds like you had a great time. Christine, if you were going to do anything different, if you were going to make a suggestion to the program committee for WorldCon, what would you suggest? I mean, I have two suggestions myself, but what would yours be?
Don't put a panel up against George. I invited two people, or I put on the list two people who were on the New York Times bestseller list. And there was a panel, a really good panel on young adult middle grade, and they're trying really hard to add more young adult content.
Sure.
So I was on a panel that was well attended. They were on a panel, and it was sparse because George R. R. Martin was doing readings, and he has a habit of reading from his unpublished next installments, which he did last year.
Right.
So I'd say I would build in a space around lunch in which there is no programming, or I would build a space, if you have someone like Martin speaking, you don't run panels up against him, because pretty much everyone is flooding that particular, and it's in the ballroom, so it's going to accommodate,
a lot of people.
And don't put programming up against it because that's a little unfair. But in general, I don't know what I'd change. I didn't understand coffee clutch, so if I have to do that again, I'll explain it better to people.
Right.
But people signed up and seemed to know what that was.
Yeah.
I think the advertising could have been a little stronger. I think they could have done 1,000 more people if Kansas City had really understood what was coming to town.
Right.
But gosh, if I had to do anything different, I don't think I would. What would you change?
Two things. I would change some of the really well attended, and you can tell what they're going to be just by the subjects. I would have some of the well attended and dense panels to be more than 50 minutes. Maybe do 2 hours. But not but see, there's a bad side to that, because if you get a moderator who doesn't know how to moderate very well, and there were a bunch of them there, that could be a disaster. So that's a double-edged sword. It could go well, it might not go well. And the other was I found the website for the event to be completely unhelpful. So those are the only two things that I found. But who am I? I'm just like one guy who was there. And Jarvis, what about you? You're a veteran now, pretty much, for ONYXCON. Is there anything that you see that really sets itself out that you would like to see done differently to make it a more effective convention?
Only one thing really. We were as we were driving down and coming back and stuff, we had an opportunity to kind of decompress and pick everything apart and discuss it. And the only thing that really comes to mind would be to move, because it's a 2-day event, to move it from Friday and Saturday to Saturday and Sunday, so that people coming from out of town can more easily participate. And that was in addition to the other the marketing portion and participation that I talked about before. But that would be the only major change I would suggest to any of the if it's a con that's like 2 days, to move it to Saturday and Sunday so that more people can participate.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. Let's see. MIDAMERICACON actually started with program events on Wednesday. Did you attend anything on Wednesday, Christine?
They're huge.
Oh, I was there since Monday at 9 a.m.
9
Oh, my God.
Early bird.
We set up for 2 days, including that weird river and volcano, because I said I would help. And I'm glad I did, because, I started talking to people who are working their ass off, and I'd go, oh, you know what, you have a really nice accent. Where are you originally from? And the guy looks at me and says, Dublin. And I said, really, where are you living now? And he goes, Dublin. And I hadn't realized how many people who are international fly in for meetings throughout the year. They're all well-funded. They're all volunteers. And then they show up for 2 days to set up. So I was ready to hit the ground running on Wednesday, but I was exhausted. But the programming was good. I did a reading. I did a reading on Wednesday, had a ton of people show up. I talked about the idea of audio books and how much money Amazon takes. And there's got to be a conduit in which content creators who are required to pay for the talent and format the audiobooks keep a larger share of their money. Because essentially Amazon is the distributor is taking 60% if you give them an exclusive and 75% if you don't. And I said, but you have to do all the upfront expense. And a woman came up to me several times during the week and said, we've been thinking about that. We think you're on the right track. We're buying out a company, and we're going to figure out if we can make that work. And I just looked at her. fell open, and she says, "Yep, this is how WorldCon works." And you had a really good idea, and we all got thinking about that. Why are we doing all the work for the least amount of money? And so, Wednesday was very productive for me.
Well, and for people who are not looking at the industry, big picture look, right now the battle for the desktop, the battle for content creation and management is really going to be, it's ending up being Amazon and Google. And then, and then everyone else. And when I say everyone else, that includes HarperCollins, that includes Penguin Tor, that includes everyone else. And they're going to be at such a low tier just because you really are going to have to know what you're looking for. There's not going to be any browsing around easily for content created outside of the Amazon and Google stables for a little while yet. And remember, Google at one time wanted to scan in every book that existed to be able to provide it to people. And, the one thing that they were working on was figuring out how they could do that without having to pay copyright and things like that. I have not heard about their global plan to take over the world lately, but I do know that it will finally be a big battle royale between Google and Amazon. Amazon's tough because, so many people shop there. So many people go there first, and, that makes it a little difficult if you want to try to fight City Hall.
But realize, Amazon bought out Goodreads. Amazon bought out Audible. If you do a book on Audible, Amazon then prices your 40% royalty based on the $15 that Audible users pay every month. And the problem with all of this is one day the Authors Guild was suing Google for the scanning.
Right.
And I went to see what of my books was on there, and one of them was a book that I get full royalties on, and 100% of the book was scanned.
Right.
And my sales on that book dropped dramatically. Why buy a book if you can just read it? And so, I sent a complaint. They took it off. But there's something audacious about the fact that we have created industries who feel they have the right to take the lion's share of revenue away from content creators in despite copyright laws. And Amazon is asking, people go, well, Amazon's undercutting bookstores. They're not only undercutting bookstores, but they are asking for 50%. So if you are a publisher, you've got to pay if you have a distributor, the distributor gets 30% of net, I think, but Amazon wants 50% of gross. I think Barnes & Noble is around 40%. Now, you could say Amazon does free shipping, but they're charging, annually, so they're not taking a huge loss on that. But when you have to pay an illustrator and you have to pay a book designer and you have to pay a copy editor and, the publisher needs to get paid and the person who printed the book needed to get paid, Amazon is wanting the lion's share of the cost of the book. And
we could thank Ronald Reagan for that, when he decided to denature the Sherman Antitrust Act.
Right.
You know what I mean? It all comes back to these so-called conservatives, and all they're conserving is revenue for their friends.
Well, and I'm wondering how the feds went after Apple and not Amazon, when Amazon is the bigger monopoly. And what I've been told is Amazon, was whispering in their ear. And, Amazon sells a lot of books. I'm not going to short them for that. But 50% isn't driving down the cost of books. It's driving up the cost of books.
I don't know what to say about that. And about the only thing I can say is at this point, I have not released any of my work electronically yet. They still have to buy the hard copy book. But you know what? That's not going to last forever. That's not going to fly forever. So I'm going to have to think. I'm sorry?
I'm talking about hardcovers. Even
that. Yeah. Okay.
I
Go
start
ahead.
asking some of my publishers with whom I have a good relationship, what is Amazon's percentage? And it is on a hardcover. They want 50%. So authors don't sign contracts in which you get paid on net. You have to be paid on gross.
On gross, yeah.
Net, you're getting paid what's left over after Amazon has taken 50%.
Yep. Well, okay, let's get away from that because it just makes us all angry.
Oh, yeah.
Realize Amazon doesn't give 50%. Amazon wants 50% so they can undercut everyone else. So they're not actually, on a $20 book, they're not actually making $10. What they're doing is saying, it's a $20 book, I'm going to offer it to you for $10 or $11. They're taking a loss to put everyone out of business, but it's not good business for us.
Right.
All right. A quick question.
The other thing,
does anyone know the status of Smashwords? Have they been purchased by anyone yet?
Don't know. I'm going to go look it up for you while we're talking.
Me too. But I don't know that they're as influential as they used to be because when they were small and the only game in town that was great, but they took everything, and so I think they got cluttered.
Mm-hmm.
No, it looks like they're still independent, supposedly. But there is an article that contrasts between the differences between Amazon and Smashwords for people to kind of take a look at that. I think that's mostly for electronic publishing. Oh, you know what else that Amazon has done? Amazon is now cutting deals with the hard copy publishers to do print on demand for them so that they could just print it at their own facility and then send it out.
Huh.
And they're still, they're still taking the lion's portion of it, even though their costs are lower, in terms of receiving in books, inventory and things like that. Let's just state the obvious that when you look at any business endeavor these days, however somebody can squeeze the most profit out of it is the way the business is going to run. Fortunately, we have some very creative people. I met a lot of like you, Christian, I met a lot of creative people at MIDAMERICACON who can be the driving force behind changes in the economic dynamic. So that'll be fun to watch. Because if WorldCon decides to do their own catalog, that's going to have some effect.
Yeah.
So keep me posted on what you find out. Because if WorldCon becomes a sci-fi distributor, and however they do that, I think they would have to probably separate into the not-for-profit and a for-profit, have the not-for-profit umbrella, and then have a for-profit arm underneath it. But in terms of science fiction content, especially because sci-fi, fantasy, and horror are now becoming much, much more popular and much, much more mainstream than even a generation ago, that looks like it could turn into some significant leverage. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the topic at hand. This was the first big convention that I attended, and it was certainly the first one that I participated in, and I don't think I could have had a much better experience doing this other than possibly feeling better, So
health-wise.
It makes me, I'm thinking about Helsinki, but I don't know if they're going to let me out of the country, with the ankle bracelet and everything. But at least if it's
just show me your press pass from Black Science Fiction Society.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because I'm looking at my MIDAMERICON pass and it says William Hayashi host Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, and that's saved me. Christine, how much is membership, voting membership?
Ooh, it was $240 at the door, and I'm really grateful that my daughters are not yet at that age.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I paid, maybe $150, $170 for the entire weekend, which included voting rights, and then I bought a last-minute membership from someone who couldn't go, and so I ended up getting the cheap price. But it's in the $150, $170 range.
Oh, then I didn't save as much as I thought I did. And I was looking for you because you said, hey, I can get you a membership, and I thought, oh, well, that would be great. But I got a press pass instead, so I got it for free.
$140 if you either buy by the day, or it would have been $240 was the price if they had not given you the press pass and you wanted to buy right then. It would have been $240.
Oh, okay. So that would have been $500 for the two of us. Okay. I mean, not you and me and the other woman I was with, and not that I was with her, but I mean,
yes.
You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah. We know what you're saying.
How you are. I'm gonna tell my husband that.
Well, and they were so accommodating. The membership lady was trying to figure out a way to get me in there, and she says, "Well, what do you do?" And when I said I was a radio show, she said, "Oh, okay, cool. Let's get you that press pass." So
they are so nice. I'm not kidding when I say they are just so nice. But they're all volunteers, and they all do it for the love of it. And I think, when I go to other conventions, especially book conventions, everybody's there to sell something. There's the vendors
right.
and
yeah.
And there's kind of a jadedness to it, and this caught me off guard because I was already on guard. And I was like, okay, I'm coming. They don't know me. I'm black. I'm not sure how this is going to be. They claim that they really want us, but you know how that goes. You know what? Even the guards were friendly. They were killing me, but the panels were good and the people were nice. And you go to the registration booth, and I'm getting badges for my daughters, and they're having debates about who's on what Pokemon Go team, and I go, you know what? I don't even want to know what this is. But when it was done, a gentleman from the UK had come by and said, I was going to get the book, but then in the UK, but then I can't get your signature, so he bought one, and then he came back later and said, would you like to go to dinner? And by the way, we're going to be in Helsinki, and we should meet up for dinner when we're there. I know these great restaurants. And, and I'm processing this, went to dinner with him and his wife. My daughter came along, had a blast. Then met a couple from Vancouver, and the guy had worked early on the Pokemon Go software, and he says, oh, I was in your science panel, and you seemed like so much fun when you said you were a recovering civil engineer. So my wife and I wanted to know if you wanted to go out to dinner. Well, they were here for 2 extra days, got along with me and my daughter. So I said, well, I got a car. Let's go explore. Let's go find barbecue. Had a blast because they go to this every year. They have already started researching their tickets for Helsinki, and he goes, no, you get in there and you realize that here's a place where you fit in, and here's a place where you belong, and people like you for you. And there's a few people who are political about it, and they don't tolerate it.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, I heard a little click in my ear. I'm thinking, oh, I got disconnected. Yeah, I probably won't go to Helsinki, but it's such a cool thing. And I think if they know I have some availability, they might use me again. So who knows? Who knows? And I'm really sorry I didn't get to run into you, Christine. Oh, maybe that click was her.
She may be on mute or something. I see her in the chat room.
Yeah, me too. All right. So, what's the next convention you're going to, Jarvis?
It's a toss up. We may be going to African Street Festival here locally.
Okay.
That one is kind of up in the air, but we'll definitely be at the Motor City Black Age Comics in November.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So look, I think this will be our 4th or 5th year going there. Yeah. So, like I said, once I get to these events, man, I put them on my calendar and kind of break my neck to get there because, like I said, they serve multiple purposes.
Yeah.
And it's on the part of the target market,
Yeah. Well, and I've got a couple here that I might have inroads into. I'm not sure about C2E2. I don't know about the internal structure, but if the people at WindyCon want me, it took a little while. I listened to you, and then I didn't listen to you, and but not so much for selling, but for that all important networking and getting your name out there. I see the utility of it, and I see the where the value is. So thanks for at least pushing me into thinking about doing it.
Most definitely.
Because
I know I couldn't make it,
cool.
so I was like, let me see who I can send some information.
Oh, Christine got hit by a storm and a power outage. I hope she doesn't get hit by lightning. There was one night there at, what night was it? I think it was Friday night in Kansas City. We had a hell of a storm. And it's funny because the bus stop that I needed to be at to go back to my hotel was under a second floor. They had a second floor like porch above the street, and I got to hide underneath that. With all this rain coming down and everything, and strange city, and the people were hospitable. The people at the hotel, the people at restaurants, stuff like that. They were very hospitable, nice people, and that makes a difference. I don't know if it's going to be like that if I go to France or something. You hear about how certain countries are not as hospitable for certain parts of the country, and then
yeah, and that's real unfortunate.
Yeah. Now, have you given any thought? We talked about it a year ago about putting together at least a program of blacksciencefictionsociety.com awards for achievement and art and things like that. I know you've been busy with school and stuff like that, but have you given any further thought to us putting that program together? Because that would be something kind of cool to do at one of these conventions, and then of course record it, transmit it, and what have you.
I've kind of, and you're right. I've been so busy running around doing various things. I haven't put much thought into it beyond what we've discussed so far. But one thing that most definitely it is going to be on the horizon between 2017 and 2018, most definitely 2018, to have another event and to possibly have that within that particular event. So that it's all like one, that'll be a facet of that particular event. And I think the closest parallel I can think of would be at the East Coast Black Age of Comics. They have a Glyph Award. Now, this is specifically for comics and the comic industry. I don't think they venture outside of comic books and art and things of that nature into novels and other things. So it won't be exactly like what they're doing, but we could take some positives from what they're doing and apply that to books and things of that nature, not just comics.
I just read an article here. Bad news on the Blade Runner sequel set. It collapsed on a construction worker in fatal accident, I guess, in Hungary.
That's what happened. That's where that was. I heard about it. And I think they were initially thinking it might have been some kind of nefarious activity going on, but then they kind of ruled that out.
Yeah, they apparently they have wrapped on the Blade Runner sequel. So I would say very soon now, sometime in the next year, we're probably going to see, production film and production stills from what the sequel's going to be. I'm kind of interested to see what that's going to be, because in terms of, science fiction film noir, I think Blade Runner is probably the quintessential movie that so many people have copied from.
All right, I think it's the foundation for the entire cyberpunk.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see that come out. I haven't seen who's in the cast yet. Have you, by chance? Either of you two?
No, not at all.
No.
Kristen, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, good.
We just want to make sure. Now, did you lose power in the house, or what happened?
I have one phone on AT&T, which is what I'm on right now.
Okay.
My other phone is Google Fiber, which is actually a pretty nifty setup. But I realized that if the power hits and the fiber jack, which controls the internet and everything, goes down, you lose not only the internet, but you lose the phone.
Yeah,
sure.
Voice over IP.
And I realized right away when the phone went dead what happened, but I keep one of the lines under AT&T because of the copper legacy.
Sure.
And was able to dial there, but it took a minute to get the internet back so I could remember what number to dial. So I'm back.
Let me ask you a question now, Christine. When you look back upon, the kind of experience that you had at MIDAMERICACON, what's the most memorable part? Is it what you were saying a little bit earlier about the fact that so many people are there to meet so many, to meet other people, learn about different things? I mean, what is your, the best takeaway that you have for the event?
That if I was looking to broaden out a community, and I don't just mean people to buy my book, but mostly what I was looking for was, I'll call it like a church home.
Okay.
I felt that way when I went down to Atlanta, but in this case, it was so obvious that there's a core group of people who go every year. And so they were reconnecting, but they were so kind about drawing new people in. They were really big about having first WorldCon tags so that they could identify, that other people could identify who was new, and people were asking me about my experience and pointing things out. And so for me, it became more about a community of nerds and geeks and scientists. Then it became about, let me get the word out about my book. And then to see an astronaut playing at a TARDIS with my kids,
right.
It was just, it felt like family. And the other thing is nobody was mobbing the stars. Nobody was mobbing the astronauts. Nobody was mobbing George R. Martin or Tamara Pierce or people who had won nebulas. I was only vaguely aware that Neil Gaiman was running around. There was no, everybody felt like they were on equal footing, and I was not uncomfortable walking into a crowd of people that I had never met before. At one point, a woman said, "Come on, we're doing karaoke," and I thought, "No, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to be off." And I said, "I think I'm done. It's like 1 a.m, and I think I need to go home because we've got to start again in the morning." And what was funny is as I was going down the escalator, a group of people were upstairs wailing on this karaoke, and I started to turn around and go, "Oh well, God, I'm at least that bad."
Yeah.
My kids felt comfortable. So my takeaway is one of the organizers had told me when I did a panel days before the event started, he says, make sure when you introduce yourself, you put your book up, then put it back down, because there's some people who are trying to hawk their books and they'll leave it sitting up all the time, and that's considered rude. He says, but put it up and put it back down. Well, I went to one panel where I forgot to bring a book.
Right.
And I was moderating, and I'm introducing apparently these 4 rock stars I had never met before because the panel was packed, and we were talking about science. And when I was done, the gentleman sitting to my side, who is a consultant, asked everybody, said, well, we can't start until you introduce yourself and tell everybody what you're working on. I thought that was, I was so flustered. It was the kindest thing, and that set the tone for the entire conference is
right.
That's how it operated, and I have never gone to anything like that outside of maybe going down to the Atlanta conference. I thought, wow, I was so energized from that experience when I got back. I didn't even know where to start other than where's the next one and how soon can I sign up?
Well, okay, based on the way you described your experience and the experience I had, I'll think about the Helsinki thing because this was an experience that I had never had before. This is an experience I had never had before. And one of the things that I did, I wrote Discovery, the first book in the trilogy, in 2001. And the thing that I did was I decided to pay closer attention to my life, to see what my life might be like, because it was a brand new chapter in my life. I'd never written a book before. I didn't write short stories or anything like that. And I wanted to pay attention to what that did for my life. And then to go to this event and to be treated the way I was, because not only was I a content creator, but I was a moderator and a panel member and this, and this. And this is what makes, such a positive impression on me in terms of kind of like getting into a new chapter in my life. Because
about this was international. I had international.
It was, yes.
Friending me on Facebook after that conference was over, some of whom are organizers that I had not met until I got there, and I'm sitting here thinking about how do I broaden out my internet, my United States audience, but here's this international audience.
International, yes.
And they're all saying, well, tell me more about yourself. Oh, wait, I looked you up. We also looked up to see if we could get you in the UK or we could get it was, I think I'm sounding repetitive, but, I looked at my husband and I said, did you get to any panels? And he said, well, I got to a few, but I was so happy staffing your creator space table and ended up meeting so many people that way. And on the last day, I said, you know what, you got work, go home. I'll do the last day. I'm too exhausted to circulate. And a guy came by and said, oh, I was looking for your husband. I wanted to give him a card. And I said, why? And he says, well, we were wondering if he'd be interested in taking a leave of absence at some point in the future, because we are always looking for family physicians to come up and do a 3-month stint in the Arctic. And I said,
how cool is that?
How did you get started? He says, oh, your husband noticed my backpack. Most people didn't know what brand it was, but your husband knew. And so I sat down and we struck up this long conversation while he was staffing your table. And he says, here's my card, have him call me. And then a gentleman from Idaho came by and said, hey, I heard you're doing this proposal at MIT to do education for children in refugee camps, and here's my card. I've got connections, and there's this school that's got a large refugee population, and wouldn't it be fun to connect kids who have already made the transition with kids still in camps? Here's my card. So it wasn't even just about science and science fiction. It was this community of people connecting, and one person said, yeah, we're nerds. We don't fit in anywhere. We fit in really well together. This is family. And that nailed it for me.
I can't say that I had any less of an experience. I'm not going to the Arctic though, but no, I'm serious. I mean, people, I've never been to an event that big where it was like you said, it's like a community. It's like a village. It's like a whole village where people get together and they want to know, hey, what do you do? Where are you from? What are you interested in? And what was funny to me was that, I had so many people wondering why a guy with a Japanese last name was so deep into Afrofuturism and black science fiction. And I had a lot of fun with that, obviously, because I like to have fun with people. But it changed a lot in me. It changed how I look at how this whole thing. Because, last year I was sitting at home and I was streaming, I was streaming Worldcon, during the whole sad puppy people, and that was my entree into the business side, the cultural side, and everything of Worldcon, and that is such a diminished look at what that community is all about. So this was an eye-opening thing, and I reveled in it. I really enjoyed it. So.
We used to show up because when they said, I only met this group a year ago, and only because I got invited to a special session they had with George R. Martin, and so I was one of the organizers, and he kept talking about it, and he says, where do we go find this broader, these people of color? And I said, the biggest impediment is whether or not you feel welcome, whether or not you invest in a situation in which you show up and nobody talks to you and you feel like an outlier or you feel like an other, or they only want you there for a diversity panel. So I said, it's not that easily defined, and especially in the Kansas City area, there are no real advertised groups. And I said, so we're going to have to do this organically. And I started putting down your name and Jarvis's name and Milton's name. And then I went down to State of Black Science Fiction and met Cerise, who had come down from D.C., and she said, okay, I'm convinced I'm going to go. And she emails me and says, what should I expect? And I said, girl, I have no idea. I said, we are going to go flounder together because I have no idea what we have just bought into. And we would see each other running. We ended up sitting together for the Hugos, and Clarence sat down next to us. I had not met either one of them in person until that conference. We took a selfie where we were hugging, and we said we need to make sure that other people like us, people of color, need to know we were not only accepted there, we were enthusiastically embraced.
Right. Right. Yeah. And when you think about the people you met, you had Cerise, you had Clarence, there was me. We couldn't have been better ambassadors either.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, when you look at it from that side, I will say this. Let me ask you this. Did you run into any panels where the moderators were not very good?
One, but I gave him some ribbing because actually he was better than I'm going to make out to be. But in the middle of our panel, he took a phone call, and I happened to be sitting next to him, and it was from Tamara Pierce. So he was quietly trying to tell her, I can't, I'm moderating. And I made this joke, and I said, you realize that I would have said something to you if I hadn't seen who you were answering. But, no, it was very good, and I was ribbing him because he was Andy Weir's first editor, so, I'm not going to give him shade. No, I think they were really careful. I mean, there's a possibility there could have been some. I know one person came up to me the day after I did the science panel and said, you did a really good job moderating. I just need to tell you something. You didn't need to introduce all of the people. We already knew who they were. And I said, well, I didn't. So I was polite. And I realized it's because a lot of these people go year after year, and they know all of these people. They know all the experts. But no, I can't think of a single panel that was not well done.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean there weren't some. I mean, my God, they had so many programs going on simultaneously. I had to go online and search by name just to start plugging in who I thought I had time to see, and then I didn't have time to see much of anything because I was running. I mean, if I lost 5 pounds that week, that'd be close. There was just so much to do and so much to see. I will say this, but it'll get me in trouble. I went.
Have at it.
I went to, oh my God, this is going to kill my career. I went to the masquerade, which is a competition. So people are doing extremely elaborate costumes, and they are being judged. And that one could have been moderated a little better, and I will leave that. And it was very. People were tired already, and the costuming was amazing, but that one I think was not as well managed as it could have been.
Oh, Jarvis, that reminds me. How many people did you see who were into cosplay at ONYXCON?
Let me see. I think there were about a dozen. But I think I was so busy running around doing different things that I missed some of the things. Oh, and I want to give a plug too to DeForest Chesney. He's a member of the site, and he also is a comic creator, and he has a radio show of his own. He took some time out, and we stepped over to the art gallery, and he did a quick interview of me. I think it might be like 20 minutes or so, but he took some time out to interview me, so I want to give a shout out for that. Also, I cannot thank Joseph Wheeler enough for putting on ONYXCON all of these years as well. But back to the cosplay. I can recall about a dozen people doing cosplay, and I think it's so cool. I'm excited about the near future, possibly next year, doing cosplay with the Earth Squadron characters.
Yeah.
Because I've already had a lengthy conversation with Tanya Woods. She's a master crafter in the world of cosplay, and I've seen a number of her suits and her in cosplay before I ever knew who she was. But she's on the team in terms of bringing one of our characters to life next year. Yeah.
Well, we're about a minute or so from ending the show. I just want to say that I couldn't have had a better experience. And being a little under the weather, made it that much more special because it was easier. The people were very accommodating. They were the nicest people I've met in a long time. And my only regret is that I didn't get to hook up with Christine and the rest, to do stuff later. But I'm old. I'm tired. I'm old,
But you know what? If Helsinki doesn't work up, Puerto Rico is not at the same time. So maybe we all decide we're going to hook up at Puerto Rico and spend some.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Puerto Rico next year is going to do North American because there are so many people who can't get to Finland. So I've heard it's smaller and intimate, but it could be a great reunion, and it could be a great way of getting people pumped up because the year after, in 2018, get ready, it's in San Jose, California.
Yes, it is. And my only regret about the whole situation was that I did not have a hotel downtown. I mean, there was nothing wrong with my hotel, but bus service ends around 10 o'clock. Who the hell wants to pay $40 or $50 round or one way for a cab? But I definitely, when I do this again, I'm going to be in the mix of things because I think I'm going to have a much, much better experience if I don't have to worry about things like bus schedules.
Yeah, we had some people who were doing it late and we're going to be in Kansas, and I said, no, stay at Crown Center, which is the Hallmark complex. Because Crown Center is right at the edge of the streetcar, and Kansas City made the streetcar free. So you take the streetcar up, and then it's like 2 short blocks, not the long way, but the short way over. But I had a couple people email me and say, I can't get into the ones around that little square at the convention center. Where else do you recommend? And I said, here, let me do a little research for you. And one person came in from Chicago, and I said, don't pay the Weston parking rates, just park in my garage. And because I'm going to be with the car anyway, so park in the garage. And so she did. I said, I'll come over from the convention center when you're close. Put her car in the garage, told everybody else park outside, and we are Kansas City, the show me state. We will make it work, but I think Helsinki and San Juan, I'm thinking the same thing. Even though I was only a couple of miles away, I really wished that I was in the hotel, because then it's easier to go up to a con suite and eat and then just fall into bed than it is to think, I got to walk all the way back to the loading dock where I had parked in the dealer's area, and then there's the rain.
Yeah. Oh, that was a terrible storm. That Friday night, that was awful. My
kids had walked to the theater and said, "Mom, could you come pick us up?" And I said, you're on your own.
Yeah. And aren't you glad I didn't stay on your couch?
You could have, though, I'm telling you.
I know. Yeah, and I, honest to God, I thank you for the invite. And, things would have worked out worse. I probably would have taken you up on it. But, excuse me, thank you for being so hospitable and willing to have me in your home. Do you know what Cerise said when we were talking after the Afrofuturism Forum?
No. What?
I asked her, okay, so what did you think when you saw that we were going to be on the forum together and I was going to be moderating? And you know what she said? She said, I thought that MIDAMERICACON was being very brave to have you do that. Oh, God. Well, look, Christine, thanks for being here. Jarvis, again, we don't get to hear enough of you on these shows, but I understand why. But I want to thank you both for being here and giving of your experiences for these conventions, because I have a feeling that people like me who had never attended one had no idea what they were going to be like and what the potential is and what kinds of things really go on. And these are 2 different conventions at 2 different ends of the spectrum. Well, not the ends of the spectrum, but let's say different parts on the arc. And for people to find out that, it's all good, it's all positive, is something that I think everybody should hear. So thank you both for chipping in and letting people know.
You kept getting your name out, and that's why I put up on social media. If you can't make it here and you're near Atlanta, we got ONYXCON going on. Because we wanted to make sure that the people on the WorldCon committees still had you on their radar, even though you were a different con.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, then, right. I think we're going to call it an evening. Jarvis, you want to say goodbye like you normally do?
What? Love, peace, and hair grease?
Okay, you can do that.
But as always, I want to continue to thank everybody for participating, whether you're on the show or you're sharing this on Facebook or whatever means that you have, and continue to support what we're doing. I think what we're doing is very important, and thank you so much for supporting what we're doing.
Well, and I want to thank everybody who picks this up both live and as a podcast, because we don't, I'm finding out there's a lot more people who actually listen to this not live, who pick it up as a podcast than I ever suspected. So thank you all for supporting, and, you two, you made this a great show. Thank you both, and we will see everybody probably next week. So in the meantime, have a great weekend ahead and a great week ahead.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good night.